Hey, everybody. Max Boltman here alongside the Athletic Scott Wheeler and Corey Pronman for a live episode of the Athletic Hockey Show Prospect Series. We are through the preliminary rounds, guys, at the World Juniors. You are both now on site in Minneapolis. And before we get to that, there's been a lot to talk about there. I want to start with the Olympic rosters. Canada's Olympic roster is out. USA's is expected tomorrow morning on the Today Show. But Mike Russo put together a pretty compelling projection of it. So I think we have a pretty good feel for the conversations we're going to be having about that one too. Let's just start really quick. I think the big omission, Scott, is Connor Bedard getting left off Canada. It's a strong Canadian roster. Nobody's under any illusions that this was an easy team to make. But first reaction to Bedard not on Team Canada.
Yeah, I was at the press conference yesterday, and Doug Armstrong basically said that the injury didn't play a factor. I thought that was the most sort of important takeaway from the Bedard conversation, was that it didn't sound like he was going to be on the team even prior to the injury. So I would imagine that he's on their standby list. They did say that they have a standby list and that it's pretty long. I would imagine all of Seth Jarvis, Mark Scheifele, Sam Bennett, are on that list. And depending on who gets injured between now and the tournament, which is likely to happen, I think we're going to see one or two players who aren't on this sort of initial roster make the team. We could still conceivably see Connor Bedard at the tournament. If he gets back and he continues to play well and they have a top six power play guy who goes down with an injury, I think he's in that mix. Wasn't surprised by really any of the decisions that they made. I actually wondered whether Sam Bennett's omission was maybe the bigger one, just given he scored the game time goal in the Four Nations last year. I believe he led that final Four Nations game in shots on goal at that sort of quote unquote gold medal game. And he was the reigning Conn Smythe Trophy winner. So I would imagine that conversation was a very difficult one for Hockey Canada. But no real surprises. I think it's a really, really good roster. I think it's about the 25 best players, give or take.
Yeah, well, when we did the depth chart exercise, I think Bedard for me was like a 13th or 14th forward. I thought he was a bubble guy, and I'm not like surprised or offended that they left him off. And the arguments they would make is that, you got a 5'10" guy who's a 20-year-old. The frame isn't quite physically developed. He's not an elite skater. So I think they would wonder how, in the fastest games against Sweden, against US, the hardest games, how he would hold up physically at even strength. So I'm sympathetic to that argument. That being said, I think you look at Bedard, and he's not just having a good year; he's having an outstanding year. And like there are forwards in this group who aren't big, who aren't fast. Like Sam Reinhart isn't big and fast. Mitch Marner, sorry, isn't big and fast. Nick Suzuki isn't big and fast. So I do think there was an argument for him to be on this team. That being said, you only could have so many guys who are of that profile too. And I think their power play will be more than fine, even without Bedard.
Yeah, I think it's spot in the lineup, right? Like, I think if they had a spot where Mitch Marner is going to play, you can slot Connor Bedard in right there. I mean, in the same way as we talk about Macklin Celebrini as kind of a baby Sidney Crosby, I still think Connor Bedard is kind of a baby Patrick Kane, maybe with a little more goal scoring to him. So if there was a top six spot that we were talking about, it makes a lot of sense. You can quibble, like, should he be there over Brad Marchand? That's probably the one that I would, if I was going to make the switch, would be that one. Even with the pace element, I think Bedard brings a little more pace, but there's no question Marchand has a lot of experience in those big games. On the Team USA side of this, again, we don't have the final roster here, but it seems like it's trending toward both Adam Fox and Jason Robertson not being on Team USA. I think Fox is the one that's going to generate most of the kind of ire there. And Vince Mercogliano had a great story about this on The Athletic I don't know if it was Wednesday night or Thursday morning, but some good stuff to read there. But Scott, your thoughts on if Robertson and Fox are indeed not on Team USA?
Yeah, not based off the way that the conversation went at Four Nations last year, and just this massive talk about Adam Fox. Wasn't surprised that Adam Fox was ultimately left off. They have Quinn Hughes returning to this lineup. Quinn sort of fills another offensive role for them. Wasn't there at the Four Nations a year ago. Would Adam Fox be on my roster? Yes, we've been over that ad nauseum.
We've done that
podcast. But wasn't surprised, quote unquote. I am a little bit surprised by Jason Robertson, if only because there are some sort of more offensive guys that they brought within that group, whether it's a Clayton Keller, a Tage Thompson, like late additions who just aren't quite as hot right now as Jason Robertson is. Like Jason Robertson scored 20 goals in his last 23 games in the NHL. He's scored 100 points in the league. He's been one of the most consistent point producers in the league. And I do think there was a role for him as a 13th, 14th forward, kind of like what Corey was talking about with Connor Bedard, where he can jump in and play on the power play if a guy goes down. And they've got enough penalty killers. Like they have a really good mix for Team USA. So I was a little surprised that they took, say, a Tage Thompson over a Jason Robertson. Like I just think Robertson has earned this. I know the pace and the feet are what holds Robertson back. He's not that competitive guy that Bill Guerin talks about wanting on his team. But I don't think you have to have 14 forwards who check all of your boxes if you're Bill Guerin. Like you can, I think there's room in an event like this for a player like Jason Robertson with how well he's playing. And if they run into trouble scoring against a Sweden or a Czechia or obviously a Canada, I think people will look to Robertson maybe even more than Adam Fox.
I think the reason both of them get left off is pretty similar. Skating, they're probably both in the bottom 5 percentile in the league, bottom 10 percentile when it comes to skating, Robertson in particular. And I can see from the management argument why they just want guys who would handle the pace and even strength better. And if they feel like it's hard to bring a guy in as like a power play specialist. Like that had to be Robertson's role in this team. And I think they just have too many good players to pick from in this player pool. Same thing with Fox. Like you can't, those roles are, there are only so many of them. You can't be bringing guys in to be second power play with like 5 minutes of even strength. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's interesting, Corey. People are going to hear Corey say that bottom 10 percentile, and they're going to say, well, the NHL Edge data says that he's, I think it's like 78th percentile top speed. He doesn't get to that very often. If you look at the speed bursts above 20, I know. I'm just telling you that's what the reaction is going to be.
He skates like he can barely skate properly. Like he's so gangly. Like it's obvious to anybody he's not a good skater. And it's not. He's a great player, high end skill, high end brain, big, great scorer. He's a great player, but like his skating has always been awful. Like I don't even think he'd dispute that.
I don't love the argument that you can't bring a guy who's going to play seldomly at even strength and on power. Like, isn't that what to go back to Tage? Isn't that exactly the role that Tage Thompson's going to play if he's in their 12 forwards? Like he's going to play 6 or 7 minutes.
I think when you're 6'6" and you can skate like Tage can, I think you can play a more reliable even strength shift and probably not get buried. I think that'd be the argument there, even though he doesn't have close to the skill that Robertson does.
Play center in a pinch too if you needed him to. So that helps. I mean, and I don't think they're going to need him to. They brought a lot of guys who can play center, but it's another factor that goes into it. But there's going to be a lot of time for that. We will get to more of that on Monday's show, I'm sure, especially once the final roster is officially announced. Let's shift to the focus of today's show, which is the World Juniors. And Corey, if this was a tournament that we went into thinking Canada and then the field, I think we're having a different conversation today, which is weird after Canada goes 4-0. But none of them are convincing wins. And all of a sudden, this looks very much like a wide open tournament. Could be one of the most fun knockout rounds that we've seen at the World Juniors in quite some time.
This reminds me of I think it was a tournament in Vancouver where USA beat Finland. And there was no clear top team. The MVP of that tournament was Ryan Poehling, and that was one of those where somebody had to win it, and we weren't sure who to give it to. So we gave it to the guy who got a bunch of points in the round robin and didn't do much in the medal round. It kind of feels like that tournament. I don't think there's been a player that's really stood out and taken over. Zane Parekh might be the closest. Michael Hage has a argument, but I don't think he's been dominant by any means. I don't think there's been a team that's been dominant. Canada and Sweden probably the two most impressive teams, but they've had their blips and times against lesser teams on paper where they've been really challenged. So I agree with you, Max. I think this is a wide open tournament. We have a USA-Finland matchup going on in the quarterfinals. I think that's anyone's game. And I think Canada and Sweden are still the likely candidates to win a gold medal, but I do not think either of them are locks. Canada's blue line's a question. The bottom 6 of their lineup is a question.
Carter George hasn't been good.
Nope, not good at all. Sweden's got good players, but I don't think they've had a player that's really taken over and like been a high end player for them consistently. Czechia lacks that star too. USA is just in all kinds of issues right now with how their lineup is being managed and injuries. Like I said, it's hard to sit here and definitively say we have a gold medal favorite currently.
Yeah, I think the injuries for Team USA are a huge story in this because I don't know that we ever were talking about them as a favorite, but you subtract at least one of the 2 or 3 best defensemen in this tournament in Cole Hudson due to a scary injury. Max Plant is one of the leading scorers in college hockey. He's not playing right now. The outlook of this team right now, Scott, looks very, very different. And you saw it in their loss to Sweden, 6-3, and it could have been more dramatic than that, as Corey wrote in the takeaways.
And they lost Trevor Connolly right before the tournament started.
That's right.
Too.
They've been of the sort of big nations, they've been the worst team in this tournament. They've frankly been tough to watch at times. Their goaltending is awful. Their blue line without Cole Hudson, immediately you could tell that it was going to be a problem. You could tell it even when Cole Hudson was in the lineup in that very first game. I thought him and Kleber played well, but the rest of that group really fought it, and they've fought it all tournament long. They can't keep the puck out of the net. They can't move pucks up ice. For a team like Team USA we watched Canada in this tournament and at the Olympics move so many centers to the wing. Team USA has had to try 2 wingers in Max Plant and Teddy Stiga as centers because they don't have center depth. It's James Hagens, their best player, who was excellent at last year's tournament, hasn't played well. He had a couple of goals 2 games ago, but hasn't been consistently impactful in the way that you would expect James Hagens to be at this tournament. They've got some very talented, like Riker Lee has been a huge disappointment in this tournament. Cole Iserman has been a huge disappointment in this tournament. Talented players who should be impact guys at this level who just aren't consistently making plays. So, and frankly, I don't think they've been well coached either. And I don't think that's harsh. So I think they're in major trouble of a quarterfinal exit on home ice potentially against the Finns.
Yeah, I think if I would have told Scott and you, Max, and Chris Peters that the top power play unit going into the medal round for Team USA would be Luke Osborne, Teddy Stiga, LJ Mooney, Will Zellers, and Riker Lee, and that's the 5 guys they're leaning on right now, you would have had several follow-up questions.
Zellers was I think he was our 12th or 13th forward when we did the depth chart projection. He's been their best player. Late, right.
Team.
That's right. Late out of the actual team. Probably fair to say best player in this tournament for them?
Definitely.
Yeah. I think even strength hasn't been spectacular, but he's their leading scorer, goals and points, and one of the only guys actually making creative plays with the puck, while also not being a turnover machine.
He's got the 3 game-winning goals in their 3 wins as well.
Real quick, Corey, on the goaltending, I think a lot of people out there will have a similar reaction to what I did seeing them go to Brady Noling for their group deciding game on New Year's Eve. You were not surprised by this. You like Brady Noling. Can you just tell people a little bit about Noling and why they would go to a goalie they didn't start in their first 3 games with the group on the line, and why maybe even they go back to him potentially?
Well, Bob Motzko, their coach, had always talked about this being a wide open competition for goal. I don't think the 2 older goalies, Nick Kemp and Caleb Heil, ever really had a solid grasp on the starting job. I think one of them is going to start in the quarterfinal, but I don't think that was the case coming in. I think they were waiting to figure it out. Neither of them were overly impressive in the round robin. So then they look at Brady Noling, who was tremendous for USA at the Hlinka Gretzky at the U18, at the U20 level this season, was really good at the CHL and GDP series in November, and they see a 6'5" goalie who is by far the toolsiest of the 3 goalies, by far the best, talent, but 2 years younger than the other 2, and they decided to give it a shot and see if he could help them. He didn't, and thus he's not going to start tomorrow. But I didn't think it was unreasonable. I think he's a good goalie. I don't think the other 2 are really good goalies.
Yeah. My gold medal favorite after the preliminary round is now Sweden, and I don't know if that's overreaction to a big win over USA, but let's talk about the Swedes a little bit. I think Anton Frundell has been good. Maybe he's not elevated himself to best player in the tournament quite yet. I think he's shown flashes that he can do that, but it's 2 draft eligibles that I'm finding myself most intrigued by, particularly Viggo Bjork. Scott.
Bjork, I think, has been the most impressive draft eligible in this tournament so far. Stenberg and McKenna have both had good games. Bjork has been good in every single Sweden game for me. He's playing center in their top 6. He takes key faceoffs. He has shown a ton of craft and sort of creativity on the power play, running the half wall on one of their units. He's been impressive. The question with Bjork all season is, okay, you've got a 5'9", 5'10" center. Sweden lists him at 5'10". NHL Central Scouting still lists him at 5'9". We'll see if that gets updated. You've got a 5'9", 5'10" center who has set records at the J20 and J18 level in Sweden in terms of production, but he's not the fastest player. He's not the biggest player, and you wonder where he slots. I believe Corey has used sort of Marco Rossi as a name that he's sort of tied him to. I had an NHL scout actually also use Marco Rossi to me a couple of days ago. Rossi went top 10, but probably wouldn't in a redraft. But I do wonder now, and talking to several scouts over the course of the last week about Vigo, it felt like 2 or 3 months ago he was starting to be viewed kind of as a late first, early second. I don't think that's currently the case. Everybody I've spoken to respects him, his competitiveness. Like, he seems to have endeared himself over the course of the last few weeks here to a lot of scouts, and I think he's been very, very impressive for Sweden. And if he continues to play well through the medal round here, I think we're talking about maybe like a top 15 teens pick in this draft.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Stenberg started a little slow in the round robin too, and I know he only had the one goal there against US, but I thought just just watching his shifts, I thought he was excellent. Like, I thought he was probably the most impactful player I've seen at even strength among all the draft eligibles in a single game. He hasn't done that all tournament, but I thought he brought his A game in that game against the US.
He's hit some crossbars and had some like backdoor tap-ins that he just missed on too. Like, he could not that we need to be doing coulda, shoulda, woulda for a Swedish star in this tournament, but he could have 2 or 3 more here.
And McKenna's the same way. He's had quite a few chances, just barely missed the net and whatnot.
And Stenberg had the game winner, I believe, in their opener too against Slovakia. So a quieter game, but you find a way in the big moment that does a lot. Real quick on Bjork, Scott, I wanted to run something by you. I threw this at Corey earlier this week. You mentioned Rossi as a comp. I think Corey and I both agree Bjork's skating would be better than Rossi. Maybe not at the level of Frank Nazar, but maybe somewhere in that continuum among the smaller centers, young centers in the league.
Yeah, I just think Nazar is such an impressive skater.
Yeah.
Like, it's a defining quality in his game, whereas it never will be in Vigo's. But yes, that kind of range in the draft potentially.
Yeah. All right. Well, you mentioned McKenna, Corey. Let's go there next, because it's been a good tournament for him. He's among the leading scorers in the tournament. What does it mean for his place in the draft, which we know has been seemingly in flux all throughout the season? No bigger microscope on a player than on Gavin McKenna.
Yeah, for me, if he was going to maintain his place in the first or second overall conversation, given his average first half in college, I thought he needed to come in here and have a dominant tournament, be one of the very best players, and be like a true standout. He's kind of like in between the two extremes there. I don't think he's been bad. He's been good, if not very good, in this tournament. Do I think he's been dominant? Do I think he's done what Lafreniere did in his tournament? Do I think what he's done what Bedard did? No. Like, I think there have been games on that line, which has been arguably the best line in the tournament. Him on a line with Brady Martin, Michael Hage. There's been times where he's been the third best player on that line at even strength, particularly, and there's been times where he's been very good. So I think there's still, we'll see how the medal round goes for him. I think there's still a story yet to hear to be written about McKenna's tournament. But I do think if you look at that line, I think it's fair to say that we all agree that Michael Hage has really been the driver of that line and of at least a chunk of McKenna's success so far in this tournament. McKenna's been very good. 4 of his 8 points on the power play. He's been excellent, showing his great skill. I don't think he's been overwhelmed by the moment. He looks like a returning player. But I think, Hage looks like the guy who's really driving the bus there at even strength.
I do think it's notable too that McKenna's quietest game of this tournament was the toughest opponent yet against Finland. And the conversation around McKenna, frankly, all year, and even dating back to last year in the Memorial Cup and parts of that playoff run, though he was tremendous in that playoff run, less so in the Memorial Cup with Medicine Hat, has been just that it's against the toughest opponents that people want to see him play better.
I thought he was decent against Czechia, though.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, so but that's what I'm saying. We'll see how the medal round goes. Those are going to be the hardest games. This is a big moment for him right now, and we'll see what happens.
Hage may be the favorite for top forward and maybe even MVP if Canada wins this tournament right now. You can argue too, though, Corey, Zane Parekh in that same conversation as Canada's best defenseman, maybe the best defenseman in this tournament.
Yeah, I think whenever media do these kinds of awards in the NHL, junior, whatever, we tend to gravitate towards giving a forward the MVP award because there's a top defenseman award, and Parekh would be the clear favorite to win that right now. But I think you look at this tournament without, like I said, earlier, a clear standout player. I think of anyone who's truly elevated and had defining moments, look like a high-end player consistently. I think Zane Parekh is probably the closest. I think he still had his issues defensively. I mean, he still plays a lot, so he's going to be on the ice for some goals against, just the way it goes. Some of it is a little bit on him at times, but I think you look at the level of plays he makes, his goal scoring, his vision, his play with the puck. I think he would probably be the most impressive player I've seen here so far. But I still think if the media was voting today, I think Hage would be the front runner to win the MVP. Just 'cause I think he's made so many plays and been, like I said, a driver of what I think most consider to be the best line so far in the tournament.
Yeah. All right, Scott, Adam Juracek would be another defenseman who I think would kind of fit into the top D conversation, if not for just how successful Canada has been overall. He obviously has the highlight reel goal, and that's part of what everyone's going to remember. But what have you seen from Juracek's play outside of the one huge moment in this tournament?
He's been excellent. He has played more minutes than anybody in this tournament. I believe he's just under 25 a night, high 24s a night. That pairing with him and Jacob Fibiger, a prospect of the Seattle Kraken, who is also a very solid defenseman at this level, has played a lot. And it's not just the overtime between the legs goal. Like, he cranked a one-timer on the power play yesterday. He's been involved offensively. He's competed defensively. I think he's been very impressive. I would actually probably argue that that after Parekh, that the next two defensemen who would be sort of in the mix for me for my media all-star ballot would both be Czechs in him and Thomas Galvis, who's actually undrafted. Galvis has been tremendous at this level, and internationally, frankly, at his U18s, at the U20 level, he's been a very, very good player for them. I had someone at the rink yesterday sort of say, what's the difference between Thomas Galvis and Cam Reed, right? And Cam Reed was a first round pick. Galvis is a little bit smaller. He's 5'10", 5'10 and a half instead of 6 feet, but very, very impressive mobility.
I think Reed's a better skater. Mobility. Come on.
I don't know, man. I think Galvis has a case as the best skater in this tournament.
Galvis kind of reminds me of like Sebastian Aho, passed over a couple of times. 5'10" defenseman. I like him. I think he could play games in the NHL. I just don't like. He's not Cam Reed, at least for me.
No, I agree. But he's been excellent here.
Well, let's stick on guys named Reed here then, because Chase Reed has, I think, done himself some favors in draft stock wise. One of the few Team USA guys who I think arrow up maybe through this event. Better tournament, Corey, Chase Reed or the Latvian Albert Smits?
Probably Reed. I think Smits has been good. I don't think he's been fantastic though. Had his best game against Denmark. But I think you've kind of seen this over the years with the top prospects from non-traditional countries. Like David Reinbacher really struggled in his World Juniors, Marco Kasper, Marco Rossi, the Norwegian kids, and Branson Nygaard and Stian Solberg. I think it's really hard for those guys to really elevate when they don't have the puck all game. I think there's been stuff you really like about Smith. I think you love the hardness in his game, the skating, the big point shot. I think you'd like to see him make more plays. I don't really think he created a lot of chances for his teammates throughout the course of the round robin, whereas that's what Reed did the entire time. I mean, he looks prolific at times with the puck. He's so creative, smart, skilled, moves well, defense somewhat questionable, but in terms of like the talent, you just see it right there. It's what I think. Both of them are still potentially high picks, different types of players, but both in the mix to be top 10 picks in the draft. But I think Reed has been more impressive, especially as he stepped up with the ice time needed to be filled in Cole Hussum's absence.
Reed wasn't even on their U18. He was cut by their U18 team just 5-6 months ago too. Like, this is, and he's now one of the only guys that Bob Motzko trusts on that blue line to play a regular shift.
We get some comments sometimes that are about how we really focus heavily on USA, Canada, a little bit of Sweden. And guys, the answer is because we are an NHL prospects show, right? So those are the teams that are the most loaded with NHL prospects. But I did want to open the floor to you here, Scott, to make a prediction from one of the outside of one of those teams to make a medal run here. It sounds like Finland, Czechia would both strongly be in that mix. And B, spotlight any players from those teams who you've been really impressed by.
I think that, the Czechs are going back to a fifth straight. I would wouldn't be shocked if the Swiss beat them. The Swiss have played all 4 of their games tightly. They won 2 games, beat the Slovaks, and played USA and Sweden to 1 goal and 2 goal losses. So I would expect that the Swiss will give the Czechs a good game, but I think that they're still more likely to sort of emerge from that and go on to play in a medal game. It would be the 5th straight year that the Czechs have done that. The Czechs have established themselves, as far as I'm concerned, as one of the top hockey playing nations at the U20 level. So I like the Czechs, but I'll go to a player actually who's not from either of any of the sort of 5 big nations, if you will. I think Thomas Churenko has been excellent. He's tied for the tournament scoring lead. He's the only player from outside one of the big nations who's tied for the tournament scoring lead with 8 points, and he's been dynamic on the puck and on their power play. And he's a smaller guy, but he's competitive. Like he's willing to finish checks and get after it on the forward check and that kind of a thing. But the skill level is legit, and I'm fascinated to see where he goes. He's playing pro hockey. It's typically tough for 5'10", 5'11" wingers who are playing pro hockey over there to put up points and to get drafted high. I don't think he's going to be drafted high in the end, but he's probably a late first for me, if not a second round pick for sure.
I was going to ask, how does he compare to Ike Howard, who went right at the end of the first round?
Yeah, I think that's a good comp.
Corey, how about you? Any players or countries really standing out that you wanted to spotlight?
That was going to be mine. But you keep throwing to Scott first, so I keep gotta think of other things to say here. He's the one that definitely has stand out. I think Nestrasil as well from the Czechs has been quite good. I think Chicago fans have to be really happy with his progression, with how strong his freshman year has been at UMass. You see a 6'6" guy who can skate and make plays. Like, I don't think the offense in his game's high end, but he competes well. I think you're looking at a guy with legit middle 6 potential in the NHL.
How about Suvanto from Finland? I know he is a more prominent country still, so maybe not included, but I know he's a guy that you think highly of draft-wise.
Yeah, he hasn't been great in this tournament. I think, this is still a guy who's, I think, like a week away from being 2027 eligible. I like him a lot. I think he reminds me a lot of Lundell at the same age, with the heaviness and the stick and the compete level. His skating's a little heavy, though. I don't think he's like a dynamic offensive player, but I think you saw at the U18 level at the Hoink in the summer, for example, when he plays junior hockey, he could be an excellent offensive player, and I still think he's going to be a rather high pick in the draft. So I think, given the circumstances, I think he's been fine, but I don't think he's helped himself in the way that like a Bjork or a Churenko have.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. Before we go, I want your post preliminary or post pool play medal predictions, Corey.
I think Sweden and Canada are still the cream of the crop here. I could see this go either way. I think Canada's a little bit more dynamic players. Despite Carter George is a tough tournament, I still think they have the better goalies overall. I think the depth on their team worries me a little bit. I like the way Sweden's team is rolling top to bottom. It seems like they're getting contributions from everywhere in the lineup. I think they got some good older players that are stepping up too. I like that. So I give them the edge to win the gold over Canada. And then I would have Czechia as my bronze medalist.
Scott?
I'm in the same boat, but I would probably still lean Canada. I have been concerned at times by Canada's sort of defensive zone coverage. Like, their defensemen frequently seem to get spun around and searching for the puck, and there have been a lot of grade A sort of looks and sort of some panicky moments from their blue line. And even Zane Parekh, as good as he's been in this tournament, is a part of that. They don't really have, like, they're badly missing Sam Dickinson. But I still think they've got the game breakers top to bottom in a sort of do or die game. I think you're going to see a Porter Martone or a Michael Misa be better than they've been. I think you're going to see.
I was going to say
that second line.
Win, that line needs to be way better.
Yes.
Like Iginla, Misa.
I think George will be better too. Like, George,
good enough.
Yeah. I think George will be better too. Like, this is a goalie who had a 936 a year ago and now has an 844. Like, this is not the Carter George that I think we'll see into the medal round here. And I thought it was really
medal round. Like, do we see him, or is it Vankovic you think they go to?
No, I think it'll be George. I think if they were going to give Ivankovic a look in the quarterfinal, I think he would have played New Year's Eve.
I'm on Sweden. I'm curious how Canada's going to handle the heavy that Sweden can bring between Genborg, Frendell, Berglund. Like that's a lot of body down low that I think Sweden's been able to use to good effect, and I think will continue to. So deeper team, heavy team. So I'll take Sweden for gold, Canada for silver, and Finland for the bronze. Did you give your bronze pick, Scott?
I've got the Czechs for bronze.
The Czechs, yeah. All right. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning in with us live here, or if you're listening on podcast. We'll be back, obviously, with the Athletic Hockey Show on Monday. And, of course, Scott, Corey, and I are going to have more reaction throughout the rest of the World Juniors. Happy New Year to everybody. We'll talk to you soon.